Today, let's talk about a very interesting condition that I see in people quite often. These are growths on the finger joints. Often these are growths on the joints of the fingers and sometimes on the toe joints, which lead to deformity and cause the fingers to become crooked. That is, these little lumps start to grow right here on the joints. Sometimes this leads to deformation. The joints become crooked and sometimes whole bumps appear there. People say it's gout, and the same thing happens on the feet. This leads to the fingers becoming crooked. The fingers start to stick out from the rest. There's some kind of bone, a growth that has appeared, and people say it's gout, it's gouty, it's uric acid. It's not gout at all. Well, there is some connection to gout, but it's a bit different. For example, I take a person's hand, and there are bony growths on the joints. The joints look like little barrels, enlarged in size, the small joints here. There's no pronounced inflammatory process. There's no severe pain. It's not hot to the touch. So there's no acute inflammation there. And when I hold a person's hand, I always ask one question. Which organ isn't working since these growths have appeared on the fingers? What organ causes these kinds of changes in the joints? Well, people say it's arthritis. Of course, it's clear that it's arthritis. Obviously, there's a problem with the joints. Which organ isn't working? Well, I don't know, you say. But you do know. You do know which organ isn't working. By the way, there might not even be any acute inflammatory process there. It's a little different there. The person doesn't know. Let's clarify further. I'm showing the bones here. What has built up here? Salts. Well, that's a common term. Salts. In medicine, there isn't really a direct equivalent, although in fact salts have indeed accumulated there. So I say salts have built up here. Attention, here's a question. Which organ should have removed these salts from the body so they wouldn't accumulate there? The person thinks hard, struggling a bit, but usually answers right away. The kidneys are supposed to remove salts. So the person understands that the kidneys should remove all these salts, these excretory substances from my body. And if they don't, then these excretory substances, these salts, start to accumulate in the joints, in the spine, in the small joints, and in the large ones. Salts have built up. Salts. Question, why didn't the kidneys remove these salts from the body? The answer, guys, is very simple. It's because you gave your kidneys too little water for them to be able to flush out these salts. A person drinks too little water. As frightening as it may sound, these bony growths on the joints appear primarily because a person doesn't drink enough water. Because they don't drink enough water, the kidneys can't remove the salts. The specific gravity of the urine will already be extremely high. And by the way, we should talk about this and make a separate video. Because this amount of water isn't enough to wash out all the salts start to deposit in the joints without causing a sharp or acute inflammatory process. But the salts are being deposited and there are metabolic disturbances. That's the problem. That's why the first thing you need to do is make sure the kidneys start excreting a sufficient amount of salts. I always tell such people the amount of water they need to drink. The amount of water a person should drink, guys, just remember this. Remember this number. This is the biologically acceptable minimum for water intake. The biologically acceptable minimum is 1 liter of water for every 30 kilograms of body weight. And this does not include other liquids. Tea, juice, compote, soup, or any other drinks are not counted. This is only water. This is the amount of water the kidneys need to flush salts out of my body. So that's the biologically acceptable minimum. You can drink more. There will be no harm from that. In other words, it's basically impossible to overdo it with water. All excess water will simply be excreted by the kidneys without any metabolic disturbances. You'll just have more urine, that's all. This won't harm the body in any way. Nothing essential will be washed out. Useful minerals won't be lost. Only urine will be excreted, nothing else. In fact, the more water a person drinks, the better. But problems arise when a person drinks too little water. And that's why, regardless of whether you feel like it or not, in order to avoid these kinds of bone growths, the first thing I recommend is always to reach the proper daily amount of water intake. Reach the recommended amount. Reach the biologically acceptable minimum. Yes, if your weight, people often accuse me saying, how can you say that, doctor? How can you say such things? Am I supposed to drink 5 liters of water a day? And I say, does it not bother you that your body weighs 150 kilograms? Nothing? Everything's fine? Nothing bothers you? Everything's okay? Another woman argues with me in the comments, how can you? How can I drink 3 liters of water a day? I ask, how much do you weigh? She says, 120. then I say, in that case, you shouldn't be drinking 3. You should be drinking 4 liters of water. How else? Well, that's a real problem. And these joint issues are always accompanied by the fact that a person doesn't drink enough water. So we need to make sure we're drinking the right amount of water. Second, you need to activate the kidneys, make the kidneys work. To activate the kidneys, you need to warm them up. The kidneys need energy, the kidneys need warmth. Warmth comes, first of all, through the legs. And secondly, the kidneys receive little of it because they don't get enough warmth. And that's why the kidneys don't function properly. And so to activate your kidneys, wrap them with turmanium ceramic, use infrared heat, warm your kidneys with turmanium ceramic, and most importantly, warm your feet. And when you start warming your feet from heating your feet, the kidneys start working and they begin to cleanse your body better. By the way, uric acid diathesis and urolithiasis are also signs that a person doesn't drink enough water. When you warm your feet and kidneys, the kidneys start to cleanse better and the person begins to detoxify. Will this make the growths go away? No, they won't go away. That won't be enough. But in order for the growths to go away, this is necessary, but it's called the following. You take your palms, place them on the same heat from the turmanium ceramic, wrap them well, warm them up thoroughly and intensely, and after warming, do therapeutic exercises. The therapeutic exercise is very simple, just bending and straightening the finger joints of your hands. For how long? The more the better. But not just once a day and not just for 10 minutes. You simply work on it for hours. And as a result of this work, things like bony growths, like osteophytes in the spine, go away. These kinds of growths also go away as you work on the joint and restore its mobility, but only after warming up, that is, after increasing blood flow in the area and then moving the joints so that these osteophytes are produced, worn down, and reduced. This is the only thing that can help in such cases. So in this case, it's not surgery, not some medication, not a pill, none of that will help. The only thing is to drink water, warm up the kidneys and legs, and by warming up the hands, work on these joints. That's the only thing that can help. And this isn't gout, it's simply arthrosis of the small joints in the hands. That's the only way to describe it. Well, uric acid has nothing to do with it, but the fact is the kidneys aren't working properly. So that's today's information about bone growths in the joints of your hands. Guys, I understand that you have other questions you'd like me to discuss. So in the comments under this video, write which other topics you want me to discuss, what subjects you'd like me to make a video about, so we can talk about something interesting, figure things out, and I can explain why certain diseases occur. Remember, on YouTube, your currency is the like. Be sure to give a like. I really enjoy seeing when the number of likes is almost as high as the number of views on a video. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. It's very important so you don't miss the release of future videos. Turn on the notification bell and don't disappear. I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying here with you. Well, that's all I have for today. See you soon. We'll meet again in the next video. Goodbye, friends.